The following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
Welcome to the System is Down.
Well, holy hell and happy New Year, Downers. Welcome back to what Forbes magazine is calling the least comfortable show on the web. The System is Down. My name is Dan Smuts, and this is a new year. It is the first new year since the show has been going, and looking back on this past year, I gotta say, man, it has been a fun run. It's been longer than it feels. The time has flown by since I came up with the idea for the show, and now it's just a normal thing in my life. So here we are, and not slowing down anytime soon. Looking at 2018, things are just ramping up more and more, getting bigger and better as time goes on. So very exciting things coming up. If you're new here, then definitely go back and check out some old episodes and stick around for what we've got coming, because it's going to be fun. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. One of my favorite things that we have recently started is TSID Church, which is not nearly as boring as it sounds. It is just our Wednesday night group Skype chat where anybody is welcome, and we just go in and talk about theology and get weird, sharing stories, sharing doubts, sharing beliefs, sharing lacks of beliefs, and just discussing life with each other. I think it's extremely enjoyable, and I think it's important and healthy. It's not focused on any specific faith or denomination or sect or even faith at all. Atheists are certainly welcome to come in. It is a civil conversation for people who want to chat about theology of any kind and just have a good time. It's very casual and laid back. And we've been doing those for the last 2 weeks, and after each time I have released the discussion completely raw and unedited, unfiltered, as a bonus podcast episode that is available for members of the Downers Club. And as you probably know, but I have to say it anyway every single time, the Downers Club is our patron group. It is where you can help support the show, giving financially and helping us get the word out there. And in return, you get tons and tons and tons and tons of bonus audio content. I was looking at the numbers today for what we've done in the year 2017, and this is the 36th official episode of the show, but we have about 72 episodes total, collective with the bonus and the main episodes put together. So really, by not being a member of the Downers Club, you are missing out on at least half the story, because we put out so much bonus content that it might as well be a whole show of its own. Craig and I do BTSBS, which is behind the scenes looks at ideas that we have for the show and that type of thing, and discussing news stories and current events. We also do Would You Rather Wednesday with Remzo Martinez from the Remzo Republic podcast, where he and I basically just play a ridiculous game of Would You Rather, and it's just a short, fun, absurd episode that we do weekly. Now we have the church episodes that are an hour or two per week. Typically every other week, we're doing movie breakdowns and discussions, and that is called Rotten Potatoes. So there's so many things in the Downers Club and so many reasons for you to cough up $1 single per month to get access to that. If you want to give more, you're certainly welcome to. And the higher you go in your monthly giving, the more you will get in return, including free merch, access to the exclusive Downers Club Facebook group where we get even weirder, and shout outs on the show. And speaking of which, this week's shout-out goes to my sister, Jessica Swift, who just joined the Downers Club. So, Jessica, thanks so much for your support. And to the rest of you who are not members of the Downers Club, go join. And as I said, you can join for as little as $1 a month. So that's basically, almost literally, nothing. It's basically free. So get in there. You can do so by going to tsidpod.com/support. There will also be a link to that in the show description, so check that out and help us blow this thing up in 2018. Also, if you're not already in there, we have a free Facebook forum that is open to everyone to join, where you can come in and have these open, uncomfortable conversations with myself and everybody else. It is a civil place where people enjoy talking about things like conspiracies, politics, and religion, and doing so in a civil, human manner. It is also the best place to find out what the next official episode of The System is Down is going to be, and it's pretty much the only place where you can find out when the next TSID church Skype gathering is going to take place, which you are all welcome to be a part of as well. So go get into the free forum at tsidpod.com/forum, or you can just go to Facebook and type in The System is Down Forum. It is a closed group, so you'll have to ask to join, but if you look like a human, we will allow you immediate access, no questions asked. But enough rambling. If you haven't deduced it from the title already, today's episode is the second half of the first Downie Awards ceremony, where me and Craig and Nathan talk about our top picks in media for the year 2017. So that will wrap up and put a nice end cap on the year, and we'll kick off next week with some more crazy, fun ridiculousness. So if you haven't heard the first half of this conversation, go back to last week and listen to that first, because this will make a lot more sense if you do that, because we're just going to jump right into the middle of the conversation. So, Happy New Year, everyone, and without further ado, let's get weird.
So, do you want to do music before podcasts?
Sure.
All right.
Craig,
What's
your third favorite album of the year?
Actually, just recently in the last month, stumbled across this, and it's
Are they
probably
going to be as
nothing you've
disappointing
actually
as
heard
your
of.
movies for the year?
Nah, not necessarily. I don't think so. This one I just stumbled on, and this one brings out my inner early 2000s teenage girl. Dashboard Confessionals just put out an EP not too long ago called Covered and Taped.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all cover songs. There's 4 songs, all cover songs, and
Nice.
I enjoy it because the one that actually made me stumble across it is they covered the song "Sex" by the 1975, which is a indie British pop band, pop
nice.
rock band, which I really enjoy. The 1975.
Yeah.
One problem I have with the 1975 is it's really hard to fucking understand what they're saying because they're super heavy British accent, and so. Chris Carrabba does a fantastic job covering that song, and I can actually understand the words he's saying.
All right.
He also covers, he covers Justin Bieber, the song. Hang on, I'm trying to remember which song it is. Shoot,
How did I
I
miss
lost
this?
it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, I accidentally stumbled across it.
Yeah.
So
They released like their first new single like 2 months ago.
I haven't heard that one, but I did hear.
Well, once he reunited with Further Seems Forever, I was kind of wondering if he was going to do anything with that sort of confessional.
Yeah.
I knew he'd jump back and forth wherever the money was at, but
I'm
let me
fine
pull
with
up.
it.
Yeah.
Let me pull
Pour
up
away.
the album again, just to give you a list of the songs he covered, because 2 of them I definitely know, because one is that Justin Bieber song. What's it called?
Real good one, huh?
Yeah. Well, I hate Justin Bieber, and I didn't like the song, but I loved when Dashboard covered it.
Is it
Love
What
Yourself.
Do You Mean?
Oh.
No, Love Yourself,
Love
yeah.
Yourself
You know,
by Justin Bieber.
actually
Chris
was
Carrabba
cleverly
took that
written
song
song.
that I hated and turned it into a song
really
I
like
actually
Justin
enjoyed.
Bieber's latest album, actually.
Nice.
I haven't heard his latest. He also covers Sprained Ankle by Julian Baker and Using by Sorority Noise. So if you really enjoy a good cover and you like some emo acoustic stuff, listen
If you like to cut yourself.
No, I mean, it's not early Dashboard
I
where
know.
he's always singing about his girlfriend breakups. This is
You mean it's not the best thing that
yeah.
has ever hit
Even if it was.
the radio?
I really enjoy somebody taking a mediocre song or even a good song and doing a fantastic acoustic cover of it.
Sure.
And so Chris Carrabba did really good on Covered and Taped. It was released actually in January. So
Nice.
Wow.
Chris Carrabba
check
can do
that-
no wrong in my mind, so I'm not really bashing on anything.
It's really hard to find. Like, you can't even find it on YouTube. I have to listen to it on Spotify in order to hear it. You can't even find it on the Pirate Bay, which I don't use.
Of course not.
So go on Spotify, type in Covered and Taped, and you'll be able to listen to the songs. And like I said, it's just 4 songs, but it made my top list because I love a good acoustic cover.
Nice. You want to go up?
We'll go around.
Okay. I have a couple honorable mentions. Do we want to save those?
Let's save them.
Okay.
I'll save the honorable mentions because I have one in
I
particular.
have a whole bunch.
Yeah, it was a hard list for me. At number 3, I put The Killers' "Wonderful Wonderful," which is their 5th studio album after taking a long hiatus. That was released in September on Island.
Yeah.
It did not feel rushed. It didn't feel like we need to release a new album, so here's some songs. I think that Brandon Flowers really explored some issues that to him were important, and taking that time to develop those themes really paid off when it came to putting the album together. And The Killers always has that instrumentation that I just adore, and I feel like they were able to explore a little bit more on this one. Their bassist took some time off from touring, and I feel like that gave him a fresh perspective. Nice. He did a lot of the guitar as well, so he had a large part on the writing of the instrumentation, and it just felt like a really a well labored after work, and took the spot.
Nice. I haven't heard it yet, but Killers have never disappointed before, so
yeah, for sure.
For me, number 3 might come as a surprise because it came as a surprise to me. Pre-ordered this album just because it's a band that I listened to when I was a kid, and I haven't listened to in a long time. But Project 86's new album, Sheep Among Wolves, popped it in, blew my mind. It's like their 10th album. I mean, I don't know, just based off of what I've listened to the most. I've listened to that pretty nonstop every time I'm in the car since then, and it's called Sheep Among Wolves, and I think it's kind of like a combination of old classic Project 86, which they've pretty well strayed from, that mixed with kind of Thrice, like Vicio's album. Yeah, like there's a lot of like melodical stuff, but he also still screams his guts out when it needs it. I think he did a great job, and you might be surprised to find that there's some Christian rock in my top 3.
Wow. Wow.
Some lyrically, does it hold a match to the? From
what I've heard, yes, because I haven't read the lyrics yet, but I can't listen to it and know exactly what he's talking about.
Okay.
The thing that I've always loved about Project 86 is that Andrew Schwab is like such a great
writer,
basically poet. He writes these very intricate lyrics and stuff that I love to read and love to dig into, which I've just gotten into this within the last probably 3 weeks, and I've already listened to it enough for it to be in my top 3. Yeah. But nothing strikes me as like blatant, which their album 2 albums ago was very just obvious lyrics, and I was like, what are you doing?
That's like what kicked me off their trail.
Yes, I know, it did for me too. Like, I just got into their last album within the last probably 6 months, and I was like, yeah, that's okay. It's getting kind of back to their core. And then this one, it's good core and good new stuff, but keeping what they do so well, which is fantastic.
Awesome.
Like, not obvious lyrics, and just not... There's some songs that are like really well written melodically, so it's kind of got a pop sensibility to it, but it also has like the balls to it that they had back in the day, which I love.
Nice. What's your number 2, Mr. Craig Daddy?
Number 2 is actually a band I started listening to this year, even though they've been around for a long time. Is Wolves by Rise Against. Rise Against is more radio rock than I typically listen to, but they kind of blend in some melodic, some hardcore, some punk stuff. It's a good blend of a lot of things. I've been listening to all of their albums this year, and then when this new one came out, obviously I added it to my playlist called Wolves, and I think it sticks true to the rest of their albums. I think they're fantastic. I don't got a lot to say besides that.
Nice. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I loved when, they emerged back when I was in high school, and I loved their first album, and not for any reason other than I haven't made the effort to keep up with them, but I haven't listened to anything since then, but I'd be interested to check it out for sure.
Yeah, I think this latest album stays true to all the rest of their stuff. It doesn't feel like they're forcing anything. It still sounds pretty good and heavy and a lot of good. I love their use of melody and stuff like that and harmony versus just the typical radio crap that you listen to now. And I think they do a good job.
All right, Dad.
No, I'm not talking hard crap. I'm talking radio crap.
Yes,
I can't stand that radio sound that everybody is on the same cookie cutter. It's like they just throw different words into the same songs and call it a hit. So
Nathan, number 2.
Yeah, my number 2 is from a band called Haim. It is yep, their second studio album, Something to Tell You. It was released back in July on Polydor. Yeah, it's a group of 3 Jewish sisters.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Of course.
I saw them on SNL. It was good.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah, it's they took a few years off from their last album, which was released. Yeah, it's been a couple of years. So I was surprised and appreciated hearing that they were releasing a new album, and did not let me down at all. It again didn't feel rushed. I feel like they worked well with their producer to develop a good, solid product, and I feel like the album is cohesive. There's a narrative there. It's not a concept album, but it definitely follows a narrative that I think everybody can relate to. And musically, just straight up my alley. Nice. It's a lot of groove heavy, kind of instrumentation, and very harmonic, very rhythmic, and it harkens back to one of my memories of being young and listening to music like Wilson Phillips and Phil Collins, having a lot of that kind of early 90s musicality to it. So while still retaining like a fresh vibe. So that one has definitely been on repeat for me.
Cool. I dig it. My number 2, I'm going to cheat because if I'm going by what I've listened to the most, these were pretty much neck and neck. So I'm going to give 2. The first one is Linkin Park's One More Light, and I know that all the Linkin Park fans will say that I'm wrong because it's not Linkin Park at all. It's like a fantastic pop album, but it was so good, and I listened to it nonstop, and I went out and bought a hard copy, which is rare for me. The second one, same thing, John Rubin's Rubonic. Yes, 2 freaking Christian, well, quote-unquote artists made it into my top 3. All right. But John Rubin's lyrics have always been like the best lyrics that I've ever read from the get-go. And this one gets into even darker stuff, and he cusses some, which gives me a little bit of... I know, it's funny, but for somebody to be like, screw, like, whatever you thought about me, I'm going to be even more real than I was before. Like, his lyrics are super honest, super real, and super challenging to the Christian community, which I really like. Both of those I've listened to pretty well, nonstop. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, totally. Number 1, Big Craig Daddy.
This one came as a surprise to even me. This, very rarely will I ever mention a pop artist on my list of anything at all,
Bieber, right?
period. What?
It's Bieber,
It's
right?
not Bieber. No, it's not Bieber. Very rarely will I put them even in my top pop artist in my top 10. I just hate pop music, especially radio pop music. I don't like the radio at all, really. But this band surprised me when I heard some of their music my kids were playing, honestly. And I'm like, this actually sounds really good. And I found myself listening to it over and over and over. And that would be Evolve by Imagine Dragons has piqued my interest and hit my number 1 is probably the most listened to music that I've heard this year.
They don't even count as a pop band, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They're like alternative rock pop, but they hit the pop station, so I'm going to call them pop.
They just work in pop.
Exactly. The only other band I can say that has ever piqued my interest as much as this band was 21 Pilots. Has blown my mind many, many times, but they didn't release an album this year.
They just work in pop.
I'm going to have to go with Imagine Dragons because 21 Pilots didn't release anything this year.
Sure.
So I just love the beats and stuff that they use, the electronic beats. I don't typically like electronic music, but I just like the incorporation of the rock into the electronic beats. And I like that even watching them live or on music videos, he doesn't look like a typical like electronic or pop singer.
star.
He's kind of a He's kind of a beefy, like meaty looking white guy that you'd think would sing either like hard rock or country or something, but he's singing like electronic rock pop music. So definitely give that album a listen to if you haven't already, which I'm sure everyone's at least heard the song Thunder, and I've heard that song probably 10,000 times.
I
this
have
year,
only because you recommended I listened to it, and I loved their first album, but fell off the bandwagon for whatever reason, but that song's great. And I plan to listen to the whole album.
Having heard that song so many times is actually what turned me off to actually exploring that album.
Really?
So I may have to give it a listen
sad.
and just skip that track because I when I first heard it, I was like, yeah, I like this. But then everything these days sounds like Imagine Dragons, so I grew tired of it.
That's true.
But yeah, I can totally respect that because I haven't actually listened to that album. I surprisingly, on the other hand, am a fan of pop when it's done
I am too.
well. I love it.
I put Linkin Park's One More Light in my number 2.
Yeah,
So.
I love studying what they're doing. It's the nuance when it's done right by a couple of producers.
Wait till you see my number 1.
It's the nuance that I really go for, and so yeah, pop album did not make my number 1. I'm far more in the wheelhouse of indie music. So
Sure.
my number 1 fell to Isley.
Nice.
With their 5th full-length album, I'm Only Dreaming, which was released back in February, so I had to check to see if it was actually this year, but lo and behold,
I
it
totally
was.
forgot that came out this year.
Yeah, and that was on Equal
Who was it
Vision.
again?
Isley, I'm Only Dreaming.
Okay.
It took me 2 or 3 listens to get into this album. At first, I thought it was oddly paced and a little slow in places, and so it kind of took me a while to actually get through it in a listen, but upon like my 3rd listen, I was hooked. I was there, and reading the lyrics only made me more with it. I feel like Sherry Dupree, the principal songwriter, I feel like she is an underrated songwriter on all fronts.
Yeah.
Her lyrics appear to be very simple, but there is so much depth there, and I appreciate the way that she presents it with a facade of very straightforward normalcy, but she says so much with so little, and that to me is the real true sign of an artist, someone that can just kind of jujitsu their way through their art. And so yeah, that one has been on repeat for me all throughout the year, so it clearly takes my number 1.
I'll definitely check it out. I loved their first 2 and I fell off the bandwagon with them too after
For me,
that.
my favorite album of theirs was Combinations, and
Room
it's
Noises for
been
me.
a long time since then.
Yep.
So it was very welcomed for me.
Nice. Nathan, can you guess my number 1?
Is it Justin Bieber?
No.
That's on nobody's list.
I'm surprised. I didn't know he released a new album, but now I can't
I don't know
live
if he
without
did.
it.
I don't know if he
okay.
did. He released a new one. I think it was the end of last year, actually.
I feel like if I were to think, I probably could, but let's just hear
In
it
his
from your
defense, a
lips.
Bieber cover made my list. So
That's true.
Sure.
Yeah. This made my list before it came out, much like The Last Jedi, because this is my
know how that
favorite
works.
musician
Oh,
of
Eminem.
all time.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider that to be pop.
Nope. It's
Macklemore.
not.
Oh,
Macklemore.
Macklemore.
Nope.
Oh.
Keep guessing.
Let's see. Your favorite musician.
Yeah. He's only had one album out before this one, and he quickly became my favorite musician.
NF?
No.
Okay.
He's
let's
got
see.
2 out before this year.
Oh, really?
I have no idea. Go for it.
So this is going to kill me when you say it.
Sam Smith.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Jeez. Yeah. So In the Lonely Hour was a fantastic album, and I have yet to actually consume this.
I have yet to stop consuming the album, The Thrill of It All, which it's like R&B, and there's never been an R&B singer. I mean, if you want to call it that, I'd say it's kind of like, I don't know, even if it fits into a category. But just, I mean, I discovered him because he was on SNL, and which seems like a stupid thing to say, but he's so damn good at singing and writing and everything. And he's basically just a vocalist, lyricist, and other people make his music, which is fine, but it's so damn good, and it's so emotional and fantastic, and everybody else is like, really?
No, I can totally dig that.
I listened to his new album. His last album I stopped listening to only because the new album came out, and this album I have not stopped listening to yet.
Yeah,
Let's do it earlier today.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I can feel that.
Yeah. So let's quickly do honorable mentions.
Yeah.
I want to mention one, not because necessarily I enjoyed her that much, but mainly because
Sounds promising.
you've done this kind of New Year's Eve recap for the last few years now, where you just kind of do random videos. At least for a while ago, you used to.
Nobody knows what you're talking about right now. I don't
Well,
even remember what you're
I'm just
talking
pointing
about
out the only thing I ever remember about your New Year's honorable or your New Year's recaps or end of the year recaps is the phrase "Kesha is a dirty skank." It's literally the only thing I remember out of any of it.
I think you're paraphrasing, but go ahead.
All right. So what was the actual quote?
I don't
because
know.
it was literally 4 seconds long. You said nothing about her. You were rambling. Then all of a sudden you went to Kesha is a dirty skank,
animal.
and then you kept going.
Oh yeah,
And
it was
so-
Dirty Animal because
Yes.
her album title was Animal.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, and in light of conspiracy theorists in this podcast, supposedly Kesha broke out of her Illuminati hold this year. And recently, some of her stuff now happens to be more listenable than her old stuff. So I don't know if that ties into, hey, she broke away from the Illuminati, or just maybe she's doing a little bit better of a job. But I just wanted to point that out because you've mentioned her before and the Illuminati tie.
Sure.
She was featured on Eminem's album, and it was one of my favorite songs on the album. So,
So there you go.
or
Kesha
no,
is
wait,
no
I take it
longer
back.
a
Not
dirty
Eminem,
animal.
Macklemore.
Oh,
Macklemore's album.
Okay. So she's not so much a dirty animal anymore.
There you go.
My number one honorable mention, actually, I've only listened to her a few times, would be our homegirl Margot Price. I happened to find out today,
What?
actually, that she ranks number 16 on Rolling Stone's list of top albums of the year,
Nice.
which is phenomenal to me, especially considering I've looked into some of her story, like as becoming a musician. She struggled for years trying to make it big, and they even like had to pawn their engagement or wedding rings and stuff just to pay for their albums. And finally, it seems like it's paying off. I saw her on one of the late shows this year performing her hit. What's it called?
Don't
I
know.
can't remember.
I haven't heard the new album yet. I
It's
saw her
not. It's
live.
not off the new one. It's Midwest Farmer's Daughter. She performed. That's her
Hurtin' on
big
the
hit
Bottle?
from last year. What's that?
Hurting on the Bottle.
Or one of those. Yeah. This year she released
It's country.
the album. What's that?
Hurting on the Bottle. It's country. You guessed
It's
correctly.
very country, and I don't do country. But if you listen to Margot Price's stuff, it's more of old school, like Johnny Cash style country. I would tie her.
Reba?
I'd probably relate her to like June Carter's music back
June
in the day.
Carter, Reba McEntire, stuff like that.
Yeah, I actually enjoy that style of country. So it's really refreshing to hear her music. She actually has a song with Willie Nelson, which impressed me. Somebody I actually knew in high school is singing with this huge old school country artist. So that's my.
These are honorable mentions. You don't get
That's
to
my
talk
one
this
honor-
long about it.
Oh,
Well, I just wanted. She's not my top, but I just wanted to promote some local
Yeah.
talent. So
you're shameless.
Well, I loved her first album, to be honest, and I haven't. I saw her live with Chris Stapleton, here local, and I want to hear her new album, but I haven't gotten to it yet, so it's not on my list. So, Nathan, is that your only honorable mention, Craig?
that's it. Besides Kesha,
Have you listened to her album?
In good company.
I listened to like 2 songs from
All
her
right, Nathan.
that were on the radio.
All right, yeah. So honorable mentions for me was Minus the Bear, their album Voids. I have no idea what number album this was. They've released so much material.
It's all right.
all
I've
of-
seen the name, but I've
Yeah.
never listened to them.
all of it is so good for me. It's one of those that it's again really in the groove, kind of slightly math rocky, very harmonious.
Nice.
It's just I dig it. Then also this one didn't make my list because it's a late release this year. I only just got the album maybe within the last few weeks, which
Sure.
is and it's also an EP. It's The Deer Hunter, All Is All Should Be.
Nice.
Some really good stuff there, but it's again one of those I haven't had the time to digest it, so wasn't able to really
I
get.
have 2 honorable mention lists. One is the ones that I've listened to, and one is ones that I know that I will like if I had given it the
Yeah,
chance, or if
yeah.
I had gotten around to listening to it. So,
Yeah, so those are my 2.
okay. Well, my honorable mentions that I've listened to, the album, the full, well, maybe not the full albums of, which is why they're on the honorable mentions list. Eminem Revival, that was kind of like where I had The Last Jedi. I was like, I haven't listened to it, but Eminem, it's gonna be great, right? Because I'm a big fan, and it had its ups and a lot of downs. But I think it's gonna grow on me because it's Eminem. It came out like 4 days ago, so I haven't been able to give it its due diligence or justice or anything like that. But I have listened to it all the way through, and
considering Eminem's annoying political views
we're not going
lately.
there.
Well, I'm just saying that's kind of turning me off to listening to his new album just based on his political annoyances lately.
It's because you're a racist Nazi Trump supporter.
All right, well, Dan, you've got a lot of material to get through, so let's just keep trucking.
Okay, my second one, which I have listened... Okay, I love Macklemore so much, and it's his first solo album since he paired up with Ryan Lewis. They kind of split, and he did his first solo album, and it's good, but I've only gotten halfway through it. And I've listened to that half several times, but the fact that I haven't continued with it makes me put it in this list, even though I love him, and I love basically everything that I've heard from him. NF is my third one that I have listened to. He is amazing, and everybody says he's the Christian Eminem, which I think is stupid because he's fantastic on his own. He
Wasn't KJ52 the Christian
shut up,
Eminem?
shut up, shut up. So I've loved NF since I've heard his first album 2 years ago, but he's put out an album a year, and it's been fantastic. But it's been kind of the same idea, like super raw, super emotional, fantastic lyrics, good production, but it's like not something new. In the first two, I was like, yes, let's do more of this. And now it's like Craig, you would understand the reference. Blindside was for me back in the day. It's like, they're so great. And then they did another album so quick that I just can't
keep up with it.
Like I haven't digested the last album enough to get into it. I'm sure it will fall on my top 3 eventually, but at this point it doesn't. And so my list of albums that I have not listened to, just because of all these other people that have soaked up all my attention. The Used, The Canyon, I'm sure it would end up on this list somewhere. The Ongoing Concept, Places, would definitely end up on this list somewhere if I had listened to it, but I haven't. And Zayo's Pyrrhic Victory, which is technically an EP, but... it's like 8 or 9 songs, so where does that fall? But I have basically 4 copies of it because they send me all their merch now because I did the music video for them. But I still just haven't popped it in and given it a listen. I would probably love it. But yeah, so my list basically is comprised of rappers, pop artists, and death metal musicians.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing. I love the hard ends of the spectrum.
Totally.
Did either of you guys make any lists on songs of the year by chance?
I did not, no.
Okay.
No.
Well, then I could read mine quickly.
Yeah, let's do that. Go ahead
go
and
for
tag it on to the end of your...
All right. So I made 2 lists. One is of my favorite songs so far of the albums in my top 3 list, which are Sam Smith's Pray. This is just for, I know you guys have not heard any of these, the 2 of you, so, it's just for people if they want to see why, maybe kind of why I keep listening, or like the high points of them. Sam Smith, Pray, Linkin Park, Good Goodbye, because it's a fantastic rap song, which is what they've always done best, in my opinion, even though this album has nothing to do with
rap. They haven't done
rap.
good rap in a long time, so...
Well, this song is. It was kind of a tie between that and the title track of the album, which is One More Light, and that's because it's about depression and suicide and people not valuing lives that have been lost. So Chester's death made that even more real. And
Chester, is that his suicide letter?
Well, I think it was probably tied in with... Why am I blanking on his name right now? Chris Cornell?
yes.
I think it was because they were really close, so I think it was probably meditation on that. But yeah,
Okay, I gotcha.
it may have had something to do with that as well.
Yep. My number 3 is Project 86's Into Another, which is just very melodically fantastic and beefy. For Eminem, okay, these are my ones that didn't make it into my top 3. Eminem, Tragic Endings. Macklemore, Good Old Days, featuring Kesha. NF, Let You Down. Marilyn Manson made it into this list, even though his album does not even come close. But Say 10, get it? All right. Great Dark Song. And Matt and Toby, which are the guys from Memory. Their song, I Quit Church. Love that song. Love that
I've
song.
yet to listen to that album, surprisingly.
Bought the album and still just love that song. All right.
It's kind of
The
wondering.
rest of the album, not so great.
It's fine. It's not very many original songs, which they did like some old hymns and spiced them up, which I like, but it doesn't move me in the way that song does.
Hey, Dan Smots here. I'm taking a second to interrupt myself talking to talk about myself because, I don't get paid a penny for the hours and hours that I put into creating this show for you guys in your greedy little ears, and I've got a family to feed. To make that happen, I run my own media business called Goulash Media. If you have a need in anything from video production to graphic design to audio production and beyond, you can get it all for a painfully fair price at Goulash Media. In video, I do weddings, music videos, commercials, pageants, plays, etc., etc., etc. For design, I do photo editing, album art, logos, branding, business cards, merchandise, you name it. For audio, I do engineering, production, editing, jingles, and, well, podcasts. So if you've got a media need of any kind, or if you'd just like to give a little something back and help keep my children fed, check out all the endless options at my website, goulashmedia.net. That's goulash, Goulash, media.net, where we cater to the little guy with the big vision. Okay.
Greg, you have podcasts prepared?
I do.
Good.
None of them are new this year, so hopefully that doesn't matter.
Ones that you've listened to this year.
Have they released new
Okay.
new content this year?
Oh, yeah.
I would
yeah.
hope so.
Yeah, then I would consider that to be valid.
Yep.
Okay. So I think this year is when I started listening to podcasts. So any
So
podcast,
all win.
Yes.
so any podcast I've listened to is new to me this year. So, but these 3 are the top 3. Besides, obviously, The System Is Down makes my number 0, obviously,
Aw,
because I
thanks.
like to listen to myself more than anything.
Thanks.
But the top 3 for sure that I've listened to absolutely by far over any other podcast. Number 3, I'll start with that and we'll make our round. Number 3 would be the Bad Christian Podcast, which is what got me into podcasts. And it also let me realize, because me and Dan and you actually have talked about our upbringings and our strong, like, super conservative backgrounds and stuff like that, and how we've strayed far from that. Well, the Bad Christian Podcast kind of gave me hope that maybe I'm not necessarily going to hell,
Right.
because it's a very alternative Christian podcast. They do swear a lot on it, which is kind of a turnoff for a lot of people, but for me, it made me want to listen to it more, because that just made it seem more raw and made it feel like there's more to being a Christian than just all this like generic bullshit that we hear in church and stuff like that. So
Yeah, our parents would call it a progressive, heretical Christian, if anything, which makes me love it even more. So, Nathan, how about you?
Yeah, Craig, interesting that you started listening this year. I think podcasts are definitely taking off. But I think I've been listening to podcasts pretty consistently since, I think, 2014. I
think I started last year.
Okay. Yeah. So I had a lot of material to work through, but I definitely tried to rank it based on new material this year, whether there was a new season or if something wrapped to a point that I felt was, something really powerful. So one of the ones that I've been consuming this year that I've really enjoyed is a Gimlet Media production called Crime Town. And it basically follows kind of the history of mobs in certain towns around the United States, and kind of like just kind of the history of like what happened by interviewing people who
factual.
Yeah. By interviewing people who were a part of that. So like they interview the mobsters and the police and like everybody else. And I kind of checked it out based on the fact that Gimlet, in my opinion, is a really good production company. And I thought it was an interesting premise. The artwork was really good, and honestly, that's a huge motivator for me to check out a project if they can do good artwork. So that got me in, and first couple episodes are based on Providence, Rhode Island, and yeah, it gets you in. Just like the mob, once you go in, you can't get out. It's hard to get out. So it's a serial type of podcast. They don't do seasons, but yeah, they've continued different parts of a story. So
Nice.
that's been one that's caught heavy rotation. Each episode's about 35 to 45 minutes, so it's perfect for commuting for me.
Cool.
What was the name of that? One more time.
Crime Town, all one word.
I heard.
You could just
I
listen
heard
to the
Gimlet.
podcast, Greg.
Yeah.
I heard Gimlet Media. I missed the name of it.
Yeah, Crime Town. Yep.
Yeah, my number 3, which will come as a surprise to most people that are familiar with this podcast, not this, but the one that I'm going to say, the Higher Side Chats. It's a conspiracy podcast, and the best conspiracy podcast that I know by far. However, again, basing it off of what I've listened to the most, it's kind of hit or miss just because he has on guests from all over the place and all over the spectrum of conspiracy stuff, and they're all authors, so sometimes, a lot of times, they have conspiracy ideas that it's just like, it's hard to listen to. It's not based on him and his production, because he does a fantastic job, but it's based on every single episode is a new person who's kind of an expert on their topic, and it's just based on what their topic is and how interesting the guest is. So yeah, I listen to it on a fairly regular basis, but I would put it higher if he had. I mean, it's just on me. I'm not into every single freaking conspiracy that he pumps out there, but he does an amazing job, and yeah.
I am going to move into my number 2 because my number 2 is the Higher Side Chats. So
Yes.
we'll just continue with that. The Higher Side Chats to me is, like you said, it's one of the most fantastic conspiracy podcasts. His introduction to his guests are the best introducctions I've ever heard. You should take
45 seconds long introduction.
You should take notes from him because your introduction are, my next guest is this person.
Yep.
How you doing?
I've decided,
So-
and I've reached out to Greg Carlwood. I did at the beginning of this podcast. I'm gonna have to do it again. And if I ever have him on the show, I'm gonna give him like a 5-minute long introduction, because every single time he has somebody on, they're like, "What an amazing introduction!" Because it's like a minute later they finally get to talk.
Right.
Hard to
great.
follow.
The thing I like, I'm with you. He does hit on a wide spectrum of different conspiracy theories. Some interest me, some don't. I like the fact that he does hit such a broad range because they all, in a way, they all interest me because I like to hear what other people are saying and what other people are, what opinions they're going after. And he does get down and gritty with certain authors and stuff and hears out their actual opinions. A lot of times when I hear them, I'm like, yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I really enjoy hearing what they say about it, at least. So it does stay interesting. I think a big reason why he wouldn't be higher, the one thing that rubs me wrong is when he does hit
Christianity stuff, super
or other
apologetic.
or either Christianity or other things that he doesn't necessarily agree with. He makes he takes way too much effort to point out that he doesn't agree with that. He's like, no, I don't really believe this, and a lot of you don't believe it. Well, a lot of people do believe it, though. So
Yeah, he goes way out of his way, especially with Christianity stuff, to be like, just so you know, I don't believe this stuff, but here we go. And it's like, you're talking about like the moon landing being fake and flat Earth. Well, he doesn't even like flat Earth, but like all these other even crazier stuff than that. But Christianity is just, that's not it.
Yeah, he gets too opinionated over certain things, but then he buys into other more bizarre conspiracy theories or even stuff that he doesn't believe with. He's like, well, but this is a great theory and stuff. But then when it comes down to like flat Earth or Christianity, which I don't buy into flat Earth necessarily, but when it comes down to
apologize for it, Craig.
Those two specifically, no, I'm going to throw this in here anyway. So if you don't want to listen to it, just go ahead and skip over to the next one. But it's like you don't really have to point that out every single episode that somebody mentions God or Christianity.
Yeah, people should know what they're getting into. It's going to be some crazy, weird ass shit. Deal with it.
But he's fantastic, and I love the fact that he's high as shit every time he's doing his podcast, and he makes a point to point out that he's drinking and smoking.
I don't think that he is high as shit. He is reputable.
He's hot.
And he's fantastic.
Reputably
Nathan,
high.
go ahead. Number 2.
All right. Yeah. So my second spot is another Gimlet media production. Surprisingly, yeah. So
It's a Jewish media production company.
it could be. I don't know. Jews run everything, don't they?
That's true.
And it's.
I don't know. Listen to the Higher Side Chats and you'll find out.
All right. Yeah. The first season was released September of last year. Second season began October this year. So just kind of kicked off recently. And it's called Heavyweight. And the reason I really like this podcast is equal parts a few things. And one of which is the premise, which is this guy basically chooses a person or comes across a person who has some sort of an issue in their past that they want to try to go back to and find closure on. So let's say maybe someone was maybe they were let go from a job or something and they never really understood why. I don't think that's a real premise for these episodes, but it's essentially something happened and they don't really have closure on it and they want to go back around to it and feel that sense of closure. Maybe you were adopted, maybe so-and-so broke off your engagement. So part of it is just pursuing that kind of a thread. The other part that I love is the deadpan delivery of the host. He has a really dry delivery on everything.
Delicious.
But it is so comical. He has like a self-awareness to.
So are these stories real life stories?
Yeah. So basically he'll like the first season was different from the second one, but like on the second season, people had maybe written in that like, oh, hey, this thing happened. And so then he'll call them and basically introduce the situation. Then he'll do a lot of really awkward investigative work. So it's kind of like he's a shitty investigative reporter, and it's just really thoroughly enjoyable.
Kind of like Nathan for you.
Yeah, kind of, but it's a little bit more serious. Like you can take it more seriously than Nathan for you. He actually does do the things. It's just he's so awkwardly dry that sometimes he comes off as a complete failure, and it's just so enjoyable.
This is why you like him.
Yeah,
Oh, you gotta.
because
Craig's opposed, but you need to send me a link.
yeah,
to this.
this show is so enjoyable but also touching. Like I have found myself like feeling so emotionally moved by the end of the episode by so many of them. And so yeah, it just resonates on a lot of points for me. Again, it's usually about 40 minutes plus or minus 15.
Nice.
So it's a nice digestible format. I think Gimlet is produced for radio, so I think that's why it's
Sure.
But anyway, that hard to explain. Just check out one or two of the episodes and you'll see what I mean.
If you guys haven't figured it out in letting these guys drone on and on, we are not produced for radio.
No.
All right. My number 2 is Lions of Liberty, and it's not just because I'm bros with them now. Basing it off of they're political. They have 3 shows a week, and it's always entertaining in all 3. They are the second most that I listen to in a week, and I am a supporter of their show financially because they have bonus content that is about conspiracy stuff, which is the only reason why I started giving them my money, because they have fun takes on them. They don't dig as deeply as I want them to, but that just leaves more for me to dig into. But it seems like Mark Claire, every single time they do a conspiracy bonus episode, it's something that I have been talking about doing as a System is Down show.
Maybe that's a conspiracy itself.
Yeah, like they did Alex Jones right before we were going to do the Alex Jones shows. They did a Flat Earth one right before I did the Flat Earth one. They did, I don't know, I think they did a 9/11 one. They just did a Waco one this last week. And we have been planning on doing this Waco one with a guy, Justin Zielinski, who is also a member of he came over from their podcast, so I can't really, give him shit for that because they gave us a supporter. But we're planning on doing a Waco one here soon, but they keep stealing all my ideas. So they are my number 2. Craig, what's your number 1?
Number 1, which neither of you listening to previous comments will ever listen to this podcast is Those Conspiracy Guys. It is an Irish podcast.
I've listened to them many
pretty
times.
Much I guarantee you haven't listened to one full episode yet, though.
Yes, I have.
Because, oh, really?
Yeah, 3
Their
hours.
episodes,
Yeah, I've listened to it.
Nathan, okay, Nathan will never listen to them because Nathan apparently likes short and sweet. Those Conspiracy Guys are like the Wikipedia of conspiracies because they have 5 to 7 hour episodes, which in my job, I work by myself primarily, so I can just throw in headphones and listen to one episode throughout the entire workday. It's fantastic because they will not just take one, like JFK murder or something like that. They'll take just like a specific person, like Aleister Crowley or somebody like that, and just break down the entire history of his life, like where he was born, how he was raised, how he got to where he was. Once they dissect the entire history of him, then they get into the conspiracy part, and then they talk about that for a couple hours, go back and forth, and then they get to the end, and it's all non-biased too. They're not, they don't have guests on that have like specific opinions. It's literally like reading a giant Wikipedia page of this person. Then they get to the end,
if you have
and
time.
at the end of it, they vote on it and say conspiracy. Is this conspiracy true or false? Like, was Aleister Crowley a Satanist, devil incarnate, or not? And
he was
they'll
definitely a
vote on
Satanist
something
because he started the Church of Satan.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
Or no, that was Anton LaVey. But go on.
like, say like, what Zerhan, the RFK murderer? Did he commit the murder, or was it all set up? Yes or no? You know, was it the CIA or something like that? So you get a very non-biased point. I love history, and I love conspiracy theories because of the history behind them, and I love hearing the entire story. I don't like hearing one person's opinion say, well, this is obviously this because of this, this, and this. I like to hear the entire backstory and form opinions myself. So they give me that opportunity to hear everything surrounding the conspiracy, and then they state the conspiracy, and then I'm able to
They're pretty chatty, though. Like they
are, and I
they
enjoy
blow
that.
a lot of time.
Yeah.
I enjoy that, though.
I do too.
And so I could listen to them nonstop for my entire life, just have them on play in the background, and I would enjoy it because I
They
feel
also
like
have what, Irish accents?
they are Irish. Yeah,
So
they're from
their
Ireland.
voice is fun to listen to, even if they're not talking about interesting things.
Right.
So.
And they say words that we're not allowed to say more often than we get to say them.
Yes.
So, and we talked about that previously.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, I think, if my job was different, like if I sat at a desk all day, I would definitely consume more long form content, but just due to the fact that it's a lot of broken up pieces of driving here and there, like, yeah, that's why I tend towards the shorter form content.
Yeah.
My number one, however, is not short form. Typically it's an hour to an hour and a half, or not 2 hours. And
The system is down, right?
yes, the system is down, of course. My favorite.
It's not even my favorite. So go
Yeah,
ahead.
no,
it didn't make any of our lists, but
yeah. Well, this podcast was it started in August 2014. 69 episodes later, it concluded with its first, major, I guess what you would consider a season, but in this format you consider a story arc, would be The Adventure Zone, which was an offshoot of My Brother, and Me, which is on the Maximum Fun Network.
Is that the Dungeons and Dragons one?
Yep, it's a Dungeons and Dragons of three brothers and their father. It started out just as a one-off to try to cover, an episode slot where one of their brothers would be on paternity leave, and they enjoyed it so much and it got such a positive response that they started it as its own podcast. And I think it's every 2 weeks. On Thursday they release a new one. But they just concluded the major story arc that had lasted for like the last 3 years. And it's just really, once you get into the part where they start taking it in their own direction, you're kind of hooked. It's because they're
strictly entertainment.
Yeah, it's strictly entertainment. Their original podcast was just the three brothers. It was a Yahoo Answers type of comedy advice show, and so this is steeped in so much comedy and just clever stuff that really appeals to me. It's awesome hearing a group of brothers and their father just have fun hamming out together, and that's definitely my number one. It's always been one that I listen to, stick it in. If there's a new episode, I got to make a point to listen to it in the next 2 days. Like it's just always been on the top of my list.
Nice. Yeah, my number one is, again, just based off of what I listen to the most and go to whenever it's out. It's Bad Christian. Craig, you're number 3. I mean, they have good insight, and there are a lot of things that I disagree with them on, and they're going in a direction that I'm curious to see where next year. I mean, they might not be in my top 3 next year, but I do support them financially, which actually all my top 3, the Higher Side Chats, Lions of Liberty, and Bad Christian, I support financially. But Bad Christian, I like their insights on just shaking up the system in the Christian culture for sure, and they interview a lot of people that I'm really interested in. So yeah, we've already talked about that. So, any honorable mentions for either of you for podcasts? Yeah.
Oh, my only honorable mention is another conspiracy one. That's how I kind of got into conspiracies this year, and we got into this is based on me listening to podcasts mostly, and you rambling for the last 5 years trying to get me into it.
Yeah.
They haven't released any content this year, which is why they're an honorable mention.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole.
Yep.
This is basically 2 comedians, I think, and then one like super conspiracy nut.
You mean the super flat earther guy? David
the
something?
super Dave. Yeah, I can't think of his last name.
Weiss?
David something. David Weiss. There you go. He's super flat earth, super
David Weiss.
against
I'm gonna
Sandy
get you on
Hurt.
the show.
What happened was these people would get on and basically just argue back and forth and argue about these
really
conspiracies.
petty.
Yeah, it did. And it ended with one of them got so pissed off at Dave Weiss for not putting enough effort into the show because he was doing his own like YouTube channel or something, and they just started arguing on the podcast, and it came down to, this is probably going to be our last podcast because this fucking sucks. And they never had another episode after that.
Yeah, you turned me on to them, and I listened to maybe 3 episodes, and the last one I listened to, like, I didn't look at the date, but I listened to the most recent one, and then that was the one where they're like, yeah, it's probably going to be the end of it because screw you. And they were just like bitching at each other. And I mean, yes, they're probably all wrong in what they think is reality, but like the comedian guy, the guy who wasn't even into conspiracies that much, would be so dismissive toward David Weiss's stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Even though his was pretty eccentric, and he like owned it. He went hardcore, and the other guy was very much into the spirituality stuff.
Yeah, he was like a guru in like the what's that, like the holistic type healings and stuff like that. He had his own like healing school and stuff like that, and he was really into that side of it. So he didn't want to hear about the crazy stuff that Dave Weiss talked about, but then he was way into all this holistic stuff, and it's just like, how can you
David
be
Weiss
so
was crazy, but then he was into like crazy stuff in a different aspect. Nathan, I know you got to go here in a second. Do you have any honorable mentions for podcasts?
Yes, I have a few. Kind of related to Break It Down, or Bad Christian is Break It Down.
Yeah.
Matt Carter does on his own. Something that I definitely haven't kept up with every episode because some of the topics just are not interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's totally fine. But especially the early stuff when he was focusing on speaking to musicians, that totally struck my fancy. And I like Matt. I like what he has to say. I like the ways that he goes about topics. And so, yeah, that's one of those things that definitely is on my honorable mentions. But since I haven't kept up on every episode, I don't feel like it's fair to put in my top 3. Related to that is Labeled, which...
That's a good one. I like that
3.
one.
Yep, is kind of where, if, going off of the first season of Break It Down, this is more akin to that. So Labeled is
Pretty
basically
direct, and it's the bands that you want to hear about.
Yeah, it's the Tooth and Nail documentary podcast, basically. Yeah. And yeah, it's totally everything that I want to hear about based on music that I used to listen to. And so I dig that.
I think that speaks to all 3 of us because we all, I'm sure, were into the Tooth and Nail scene back in the day when those bands were big, when Tooth and Nail was big. Now Tooth and Nail's not really so much what it used to be.
Right.
And so hearing about the bands of our like teen years, what we grew up on, that's fantastic. I forgot all about that one.
Yeah. Then one that I whenever I hear it on the radio or whenever I see a new episode come on and I can listen to it, I love it, is Snap Judgment. It is basically a storytelling podcast where you have certain people that interview someone about an interesting circumstance, or the host of the show is a terrific storyteller, and sometimes he'll just bring stories of his past and enter the episode with that, intro it with that, and might not sound that interesting, but again, one of those where just saying like, well, it's about stories is kind of hard to really give you an idea. So you kind of have to go out and find one, start listening to it. It kind of combines storytelling with rhythms and beats and music behind it, and just the way that they go about
NPR?
kind of way more compelling. It's PRX, I think. But the way that, for me, like a good story you can't beat, you know.
Sure,
like
yeah.
I think that's the one thing that throughout human history, stories have been the common
Absolutely.
theme.
Is there like a focused theme for it, or
it's
just
a
general
theme,
stories?
theme per episode, basically.
Okay.
So one might be about actually one episode might be with just one story, and then another might be like 3 different stories based on like one type of a theme. And
Kinda like
so.
NPR.
Kind of, it's way more interesting than that. Yeah, but it makes my honorable mention again because I don't get to listen to it every week.
Sure.
But I love stories, and they're presented by, generally speaking, either the person who experienced the thing or a professional storyteller who has a really good way of telling a story. So most of them are factual stories, things that happened.
Nice.
But then another one of my honorable mentions is. This might be an NPR. It's How I Built This. It's hosted by Guy Ross. It is basically entrepreneurs. He interviews them, and usually they're pretty high profile people. And just basically asks them like, so like, how'd you get where you got, and like, where did you start, and where, what are some of the decisions you made, and because again, I'm a sucker for that kind of like just business stuff. Like I love listening to, people from Southwest Airlines to BET to like,
Oh man,
it's like everything. And I'm just like, oh, that sounds interesting. And just listening to like, up to an hour of a conversation. It's really fascinating.
Nice.
Yeah. That's the end of my honorable mention.
Cool. My honorable mentions are Labeled, which you mentioned. Pastor with No Answers, which is Joey from Bad Christian Podcast, breaking down hard theological discussions in a reasonable and civil way, which is kind of what I do when I can. The Jason Stapleton program, he's a daily hour-long podcast done live, and he is like a well of knowledge and a genius from a libertarian perspective, but also has issues with the Libertarian Party. So just a very level-headed guy who's an amazing... he's amazing at economics and politics and all that stuff. So very informative, and if you're looking for bubblegum pop like entertainment, that's not it. But if you're looking for information, yes. If you're looking for bubblegum pop information, You Made It Weird with Pete Holmes is one of my favorite podcasts, has been for like 3 years. Didn't quite make it into the top 3 just because I haven't listened to it that much. I only listen. His is also, it can be like 2 hours, 3 hour long.
Yeah.
He just doesn't edit anything, just like conversations with celebrities, and talks to them for as long as he can. And he always ends with like, what are your thoughts on the afterlife and spirituality and that type of thing, which I think is awesome because he's not even like a hardcore Christian or anything, but he just likes to get people's opinions on things. And I could have gone my whole life with not knowing what Dana Carvey thinks about the afterlife, which it's very interesting to get all these people that you respect to get their opinions on things that do not affect their celebrity life at all. Like, you never hear about them until he just dives into it. Just real conversations, which I really enjoy and appreciate it. So
I think number 0 on all of our lists has to be InfoWars, just so you know.
Obviously. Not The System Is Down, which we just spent 2.5 hours recording when we were supposed to spend an hour.
Come on, dude.
What's that again? What show is that?
I get it. Oh, I'm gonna cry.
All right, thus concludes the award ceremony, and we will be sending Ben Dowd to send the Downies out first thing in the morning tomorrow. And Ben,
Is there going to be a red carpet?
Absolutely. On their front porch.
Yeah.
He just goes up to
one
the
of
front
those
step,
sample
rolls out a red
squares.
carpet.
It's like you go to the carpet store and grab like kind of a
carpet remnant.
burgundy colored carpet remnant. And just,
Yes. Just flop it down. You got this. What is that? What is that podcast?
it's a plunger.
Don't worry about it. Just take it. Here's your potato or apple or whatever. All right. Well, we've gone on way longer than we intended to. I thought this was going to be a short episode, and Nathan has to work in the morning, so we got to cut it off here. But Craig, Nathan, thanks for being here for the first Downdies, or whatever we end up calling it. We'll stick with that for now. Thanks for the name, Nathan.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
And thanks for being here.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Craig, thanks.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks.
We'll see you guys next year in 20. It might as well be 19, because by the time we realize it's 2018, it'll be a new year.
That's true.
Yeah, I think next year is only going to be like 45 days. That's my prediction.
That sounds fair.
All right. Well, happy New Year, everyone, and God bless. In Jesus' name, amen. All right.
Amen.
See ya.
You never know how to end these things, do you?
Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end, guys, and thanks for sticking around for the first full 8 months of this show. Like I said, we've got a whole bunch of fun stuff planned for this year to build the show and boost things into exciting new territories, so you're not going to want to miss that. Stick around. Keep sharing the show. You guys are doing fantastic at helping get the word out there. I greatly appreciate it. As always, please go review and rate the show on iTunes. That is one of the best ways for us to build our legitimacy, which will only boost our ability to grow the show further and further. Also, share us all over the Facebooks and Twitters and all the social medias that you can. Share us with a friend, share us with an enemy. Just get the word out there. I greatly appreciate what you guys have done so far, but please continue to do so, and I will continue to give you all of this fun ridiculousness. And like I said, next week, we're getting back into the swing of things. We're going to jump back straight into the uncomfortable conversations and set all the fun, goofy stuff of the last couple episodes aside and really get back to the core of what brought you to this show to begin with, which is, of course, uncomfortable conversations, conspiracies, politics, and religion. So please check out all the links to our stuff in the show notes and get the word out there. And I'll be back here first thing next week with some more uncomfortable conversations. Until then, question everything and stay uncomfortable. Thanks. This has been a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.